So let's now consider trying to capture some better audio with the FZ200. First of all, I'll set up the camera to record using just the internal microphones, and then I'll attach a variety of microphones to the external port so we can hear the difference in audio quality from a variety of other microphones. So I've now disconnected the SPS Tight microphone and I'm relying entirely on the internal microphones of the camera to pick up this audio. I'm standing around 2 meters from the camera, and in the menu setup I've got the zoom mic set to on, so that gives a little bit of gain control to the microphone. You notice that there's a lot more ambience to this sound, as with the Tight microphone you're talking close proximity and you get a little bit more bass response, but with the internal microphones you get the reflections from walls and carpets and things like that, and you get a much more lively sound. Let's look at the MS1 microphone, which is Panasonic's own microphone, and it's recommended for the FZ200 or other bridge cameras from Panasonic. It's a stereo microphone and has its own inbuilt shock mount to the microphone, so it should reduce any handling noise from the camera. It's got a hot shoe mount, so you can mount it directly on top of the camera, and has got its own 2.5mm plug, which plugs directly into the side of the camera without the need for an adapter. It's an expensive microphone. It's about £100 in the UK, so it is quite an expensive attachment to use with the camera, but in my experience you can get the same audio quality using other electret condenser microphones in preference to the MS1, and I'll try and demonstrate that as we go through this video. So I'm just going to plug in the MS1, and again you can see the difference between the internal mic and the sound picked up by the MS1. So this is audio being recorded with the MS1 plugged into the side port of the camera and mounted on the hot shoe. In comparison to the test we made with the internal microphone, I can only detect a very slight difference between the internal microphone and the MS1. The only advantage is the foam windshield the microphone has, so if you're outdoors it does reduce some of the wind noise. As with all microphones with foam windshields, they don't entirely cut down the wind noise, and you're better off finding yourself a dead cat windshield, or if you get some fur fabric and manufacture your own just to fit around the foam, you'll get reduced wind noise outside, and this is one I made from an old children's toy to get the long fur to reduce the wind noise effect. Let's now look at another alternative to the MS1, and that's the Rode video mic. And the Rode video mic is a popular microphone with DSLR users. It's a short rifle microphone and it's monaural, so it's ideal for directional pickup and ideal for interviews. So I'll plug this into the side of the camera, and of course I'll need to adapt it from 3.5mm down to 2.5mm with that wired adapter. So this is audio that's being recorded using the Rode video mic. As I said before, it is a mono microphone, so you are limited to the monaural capture. You can get the stereo video mic if you wanted to include stereo separation, but for interviews and this sort of work it's ideal. If you are going to use the microphone outside, I do recommend you to make yourself a fur windshield, as again the foam outside doesn't really attenuate wind noise. But you can hear from the microphone, it's quite a nice pickup. It is quite directional, so it shouldn't pick up the fan heater that's running in the corner of the room. And if I just shut up for a moment, we'll hear the ambience. So you can see it's slightly attenuated from the MS1 stick that we recorded before. I want to now look at another option to get audio into your camera, and that's by using an external recorder. So this is the Zoom H2 audio recorder. It was about £120 when I bought it in the UK a couple of years ago. It's quite a nice microphone, features a collection of microphones that you can use for front pickup or rear pickup or surround sound, and has the facility to be able to record to SD card, or you can directly output it via the monitor port. And that's what I'm going to use now to pick up the audio from this device and feed it directly into the audio input of the camera. To do that I need to adapt the 3.5 jack socket on the recorder to the 2.5mm socket on the camera, and to do that I'm using the usual 3.5 to 2.5 adapter, which will go onto the side of the camera, and I'll place this in the output port from the Zoom H2 to pick up the audio. So this is audio now coming from the Zoom H2 in the pass-through mode. I think you can hear that the ambience is much reduced as I'm much closer to the microphone, and it's an ideal microphone for doing voiceovers. It's got a nice close pickup pattern and gives you some good bass response. You can attenuate the output if you feel it's overdriving the input stages of the camera by using a passive adapter. One of the features of the FZ200 is the ability to change the photo styles, and the photo styles transfer directly into video as well. So the photo styles you use, the standard, the vivid, the natural, all can be used in video for different effects. For example, if you wanted to get most dynamic range, you might want to consider using the natural profile with everything backed off to -2 and then boosting everything back in post-production. Okay, it's extra work, but you do get a slightly enhanced dynamic range. So what I'm going to do now is change this natural profile to give me -2, -2, -2, -2 across the whole board. So that's contrast, saturation, sharpness and noise reduction. And then I'm going to show the native video in the video, and then I'll post-process that to bring it back to the normal level, so you can see the sort of quality you can get compared to the standard profile that I'm running with now. So this is video shot now in the natural photo style with the saturation set to -2, contrast set to -2, noise reduction set to -2, but keeping sharpness set at +1. So this is video shot now in the natural photo style with the saturation set to -2, contrast set to -2, noise reduction set to -2, but keeping sharpness set at +1. Now let's look at the mechanics of shooting video. I think to get good video you need to be shooting from a tripod. I know they're a pain to carry around and they're just inconvenient, but to get the best possible quality of video you should use a tripod. The better the tripod, probably the better the video results. Some of the smaller, cheaper tripods don't have the rigidity, so that if you're trying to do a pan, the legs are twisting and the column's twisting and you just get erratic movement. This particular tripod was the Koenig 100, which has quite a large head when you buy it. They're about £75–80 in the UK, but I changed the head and fitted the Manfrotto HDV 701 fluid head, which has a nice smooth pan and tilt operation. So it allows me to get some nice smooth pans and tilt with this particular head. The actual tripod itself is a 3-leg section which fold into one another and is the traditional type of Manfrotto video tripod. This Koenig is a copy of it. It's quite a good tripod, and I like the fact that the legs don't have to be level and you have a 75mm bowl on the top, and you can actually get the head level in a very simple movement, and you've got the head absolutely parallel to the ground, so you don't get any wobbly horizons. The 701 head is a nice fluid head and does allow you to get some nice smooth pans. There's no adjustment for the friction locks, that comes with a more expensive head, but for amateur use I find this a nice little head to go with this tripod. On the control arm for the head, I've mounted the wired remote release, and it connects to the remote socket on the side of the camera, and it means that I don't have to fumble for the record start stop button on top of the camera. I can just press the start stop button on the remote control. Especially if you're using creative video, you can concentrate on getting the shot lined up and following the action with the pan, and then you can stop and start the recording with the remote control. It's much easier than using the button on top of the camera. So if you are into video and do like to get smooth pans and have control, then this head plus the addition of the remote control on the arm gives you a nice combination. Another option is to use a good stills tripod, especially if you're only using video occasionally. This 055 tripod from Manfrotto with the 804 RC head. The 804 head is a 3-way head, so you can control the horizontal position, the vertical position and the radial position. It hasn't got a fluid head, so for pans it's better if you use the old elastic band technique. So if you use an elastic band and put it on the arm of the tripod, as you pull on the elastic band you'll get a smoother pan than trying to control it manually. So that's an old tip for using heads with an elastic band. That way you do get a nice smooth pan. So that's the elastic band trick for you. This is another favourite tripod of mine. In fact, it's the first video tripod I bought. It's the Velbon D700. It has now been superseded by the D7000, or if you wanted the video version with a video head, it's the DV7000, and it comes in around about £80 in the UK. The video head has variable friction pan and tilt facilities, so at a price range of £80 it's quite a good buy. The friction locks are variable, so you can vary the amount of drag on the component, and it's quite smooth. It has a nice handle for doing the tilt facility and a nice lock on the release plate. It does also have the facility of a geared rise column, so you can do a pseudo rise in your video. It has very nice stable legs, and it has a choice of either rubber feet or you screw those up to give you spike feet. If you're doing a pan, it's better to try and keep the pan as slow and as smooth as possible. Use the old rubber band technique that I've just described. To try and keep the action very smooth means that the video codec doesn't have to work quite as hard. For example, if you're using the AVC-HD H.264 codec, you'll find that if you pan too quickly, the background will break up and go into a blurry mess, because the video codec can't keep up with all the changes it's having to do rendering every pixel. Here's an example of a smooth pan compared to one which I did a little bit quicker, and you'll see in the smooth pan the detail of the headstones is quite remarkable, but once I started to speed up that pan you can't make out any detail. If you're going to do a panning shot, then you need to turn image stabilization off. If you don't, then the camera will try and hold on to the point of focus as you're moving the camera, and you'll get some jerky movement. So I'm going to do a right to left pan and try and keep the pan as smooth as I can. If we try to make the pan too fast, then the video codec won't keep up with the motion that's going on in the frame, and you'll get smearing. I'm going to demonstrate that by the fact that I'm going to move the camera fairly quickly now, and you see that the image gets blurred. You can't read the inscriptions on these headstones because the video codec can't process the information and give you all that resolution. But if you move the camera fairly slowly, you'll see that you can actually get the resolution that you require, as the codec has time to rebuild the frame from frame to frame. Another useful video accessory is a small slider. There are any number of them available on the internet, but this is one I manufactured myself from components from a company called IGUS, I-G-U-S. And if you search my channel, you'll see a video where I actually made this particular slider. I've cut this down to be just over 18 inches long, but you can get this track in lengths of up to 2 meters. If you were using it in 2 meter lengths, you'd need to support it on 2 tripods. But for a small section like this, it's surprising just how much movement you can get, especially if you're using the camera with a wide angle setting. And it gives you some nice smooth side to side panning action, and that creates that little bit of motion in your video, which just gives that little bit of edge to anyone else's. It's not to say that every single shot should have a sliding action, it's just there if you want to open up the scene to reveal your particular subject, or if it creates that little extra bit of interest by having a little bit of dynamic motion. Here's some footage of a scene I shot using this slider with the FZ200 at a place called Rivington Village, and in the village there's an old stock dating back to about 1712, so I wanted to show that against the backdrop of the cottages behind, and again I just use this slider just to reveal the cottages behind the stocks. So we've taken a look at shooting video with the FZ200. We've looked at the mechanics of shooting video using tripods or sliders. We've looked at getting external audio into the camera using external microphones or recorders. Now I want to look at a lighting setup just to help you get better video if you don't have enough ambient lighting. At the moment I'm shooting this scene using a 105 watt fluorescent light bulb, which is in a silver reflector. It gives out the equivalent of about 500 watts of tungsten halogen light, and it runs remarkably cool. The light itself doesn't have a full 100% colour rendering index. It's something like 85% efficient. So there is a deficiency in the colour spectrum, but for most cases you can get away with the white balance that you set with the camera. In addition to the 105 watt fluorescent light, which is roughly 45 degrees to me and 45 degrees above to give some sort of shadow effect, behind me, above me, I've got a small LED light source, which is just adding a little bit of rim light to separate me from the background, so I stand out a little bit more than just letting the light fade off to the background. So it's about 5 feet away, and there's just enough light in these little light sources to give you this rim light effect. Another good light source are the linear tungsten halogen floodlights. You don't have to buy them with the PIR sensor on them. You can get them as a native housing with 150 watt for the small ones, or the 300 or 500 watts for the large ones. I did actually suggest this method in a previous video, so maybe after this video you could go through and look at some of the light sources that I recommended for shooting video. Well, that's it for this video, and I hope you found that interesting. In my next video we'll be looking at shooting flash with this camera, both from internal flash and the options you have for employing manual flash units externally with the camera. So until that video, again, thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you then. Bye for now.